Throughout the early days of cartoons, choices were limited. All you basically had was Popeye, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop, and eventually Tom and Jerry. Skip ahead about 50 or 60 years and consider all of the video games on the Super Nintendo. Super Mario World, The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Ah Real Monsters, and Super Metroid. But what about all the cartoons from the good old days? Well, on the Nintendo Entertainment System, there was Popeye, which was also an arcade classic, and a Tom and Jerry game. But what of the Super Nintendo? Luckily, my prayers were answered when they finally released a 16-bit game that was long since overdue, Tom and Jerry. When I first purchased this game, I admittedly wasn't really impressed with the graphics. Not to say they were terrible, but they weren't as good as Super Metroid, or hell, even Link to the Past. But I was actually surprised with how good both Tom and Jerry looked, though an enemy might not look as good or as recognizable. And that's the other thing. Some enemies just don't make that much sense in their level. In the second stage, Jerry is climbing and traversing differing reels of film. Or maybe it's the same reel throughout the entire level, I don't know. Anyways, much like a small spinning robot in the second level, and other levels too, Popcorn in the third level doesn't make much sense as an enemy. I mean, maybe as a decoration, but an enemy, I just don't think so. I guess the very first level has to do with the outside of the theater. The big lights and huge bugs show that this must be a theater. The second level must be the projection booth. Cascading reels and strange and otherwise out-of-place enemies reign throughout. And the third level is from Jerry's height, under some seats and in the aisle of a theater, where I suppose their film is being shown, or a film of some kind. One thing I found annoying about many levels is that when you're on a high platform, you hardly can ever see what's below you. It's almost as if you're taking a leap of faith when you jump. You hope for the best, and if you miss, the game is getting shut off because there's no way in hell you're doing this again. After only completing one world, I guess, and then 2 levels of the second world, there wasn't much to really complain about. So as to say, every time I hear about this game, I think that one incident or error, even though sometimes it's my fault. All in all, this game isn't rare, it's relatively inexpensive, and though it is a good game on its own merits, there are some smaller issues in the game that might and probably will build into a problem, like the slow controls that take a little while to get used to, and the perspective on high ledges. Anyways, for a nostalgic trip back to the 1990s, and for that matter the 1930s and 40s, pick up Tom and Jerry for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.